Good morning, everyone. Today is Monday, July 23rd, and it's time for your JRPG Weekly update. I'm Super Derek, and this is the news from last week. Starting with some unfortunate news from someone on Twitter, Hajusopu, who tweeted to me with the hashtag SuperDerekNews. The illustrators for Suikoden V and Golden Sun have unfortunately passed away this week. Hiroshi Kajiyama is famous for his work in Shining Force series, not Shining Force 1, but later iterations, and the Golden Sun series. That's Hiroshi Kajiyama, and Kaori Fujita. Unfortunately, she also passed this week, and she was the character designer for Suikoden V. So, unfortunately, we have lost some very creative influences on classic RPGs, and they were both very iconic artists, so it's very unfortunate. We do have some lighter news, though, to follow that up with something a little happier, sort of. In Japan, Octopath Traveler got a new shipment out, and, well, they sold out immediately right after that, and now used copies of the game, prices on those are starting to hike up, already at nearly $70 in Japan, or the equivalent. So, luckily, our own prices are currently still in check, but for how long? Yeah, well, it's good that this game is in such high demand. I hope that they can meet that demand quickly, because no one likes paying more than $70 for a new game, or even more than $50, let's be honest. But yeah, when prices start to hit like 70, 80, 90 for games, and the last game I remember doing this was Xenoblade Chronicles. It just kills the fun out of collecting. But, this is a really good thing. This is sending a very clear message to Square Enix that we need games like this. And the fact that Japan is buying this up in just droves right now it speaks so well for the future of RPGs. I always knew that there was a strong audience out there waiting for a new big RPG. And guys, it looks like this is gonna be one of those moments that's really going to hopefully make Square Enix remember that we still exist, guys. That about covers it for highlights, but let's go ahead and start talking about some new game announcements. Starting with an announcement from Weekly Jump from Bandai Namco, who announced that Digimon Survive is it's coming out for PlayStation 4 and Nintendo Switch. This is going to be a strategy RPG with a mix of 2D and 3D elements, which is going to be pretty interesting. I know that a lot of the Digimon games up to this point have been mostly like kind of a slow turn-based RPG sort of affair, but they're getting a strategy RPG. It could be pretty cool. No word on whether or not that's coming to the States yet, at least not that I've seen. But knock on wood, because the more RPGs we get, the better. Kadokawa Games have announced that God Wars 2 is also in the works. This is yet another strategy RPG, and this one's actually based on ancient Japanese mythology. God Wars, the original one, is coming to the Nintendo Switch in the United States. It's currently being localized by Nipponichi Software of America, and that's expected to be released on August 31st of this year. So we haven't even got the original one, and they've already announced a sequel, so I think that bodes pretty well for this game. And lastly, I wouldn't call this necessarily a new game announcement, but it's definitely a teaser. Sega has announced, or has a teaser webpage up right now for the Phantasy Star 30th anniversary. It's looking like it's going to be some sort of title for mobile games, which is unfortunate. We don't really know too much about it yet, though. For all we know, it could be a very classical. It could be something like Phantasy Star 5, like a very classical return to their roots. That's what I'm really hoping for, and I'm hoping that it does really well in Japan, because even though it's on mobile games that do really well tend to get ported over to Nintendo Switch. And a game that gets ported to Nintendo Switch has a good chance of coming to the States, and that I would buy. Maybe. We still know next to nothing about this game yet, There's just a webpage up right now that you can go and check out. It's got a countdown to tomorrow, at which point they're going to release more information in Japanese. So I guess that that's something I'll probably be talking about next week. As an added side note to that, we in the West haven't actually seen a localized Phantasy Star of any sort since 2010. That's been nearly a decade. So, fingers crossed that we see some sign of life in the series here in the West here soon. So, we have some updated localizations and release dates announced that we also need to get through, starting with a game that I actually covered at E3 during the PC gaming conference this year. It was pretty interesting to me then, and it's still interesting to me now. It's called Call of Cthulu, and it's sort of like L.A. Noire. It's an investigative game, not necessarily an RPG, but it caught my eye anyway, so I wanted to follow up with this. It's going to be launching in October, at the end of October, October 30th, for PlayStation 4, Xbox One, and PC as well. The game looks like it's going to be pretty cool because it's also got some very Cthulhu elements, some very Lovecraftian elements. It looks pretty creepy and pretty rad. So, moving on. Cygames has announced that they have plans to localize the Granblue Fantasy Project Relink. This is a game that I talked about in the games I was hyped for this year. Unfortunately, it's looking like it's actually going to be a 2019 title, though. And it's going to be an exclusive for PlayStation 4. It's being developed by Platinum Studios in conjunction with Cygames. It looks like it's coming out in Japan in 2019, because it doesn't look like we've been getting a lot of new updates on this, but yeah, this game is looking pretty rad, guys. And also, Steins Elite is getting... Next one comes from DuoBeard on Twitter. And by the way, guys, if you have news you would like me to cover, please do be sure to tweet it to me at SuperDerekRPGs with the hashtag SuperDerekNews, so I can give you credit like I did for DuoBeard and Hajusopu earlier in the video. And this one is news from Sega, who says that SMT Shin Megami Tensei Liberation DX2 will be releasing this week, guys. And this is that free-to-play mobile game that I made a video about. It was actually my very first sponsored video, which I'm very proud of. I would recommend actually go ahead and I'm going to put up a link up here. If you haven't seen it, please do, because not only does it support the channel, but this game is actually really good for a mobile game. And Sega's not paying me to say it this time. And moving on to the Super Derek Weekly Update, here's some stuff that's new for the channels, starting with this shirt that I'm wearing, guys. The Super Derek shirts are actually back, available again for purchase. I will have a link in the description. I'm currently going through a vendor who is actually giving me a pretty decent rate, so I'm really excited to be able to offer these again. And definitely, if you're interested in Super Derek shirt, this would be the time to get them. Tuesday of last week, I released a video talking about Sega's mobile Shin Megami Tensei title, Liberation DX2, which brings a familiar battle system and dungeon crawling and demon fusion to Android and iOS. iOS is not available yet, Android is just around the corner, and that was my first ever sponsored video, so watching that video, again, is super helpful to the channel, and the game is actually pretty rad. Wednesday of last week, I also released a video talking about my top 5 underrated RPG characters, but there was a fun twist at the end for people who watched the video all the way through, so I recommend that you also check that out. And then on Friday, I released a new episode of the Game Collection featuring a special guest, Daria from Daria Plays RPGs, in which we reviewed Shining Force for Sega Genesis. Soon we'll be reviewing Final Fantasy Mystic Quest, so please head on over to her channel and subscribe so you make sure you see that when that comes out. And then Friday evening's Pokemon Nuzlocke Challenge was fraught with danger as I attempted to clear out the Game Corner. So that pretty much does it for my channel for last week, and here's what we got for new releases coming out this week, starting with and ending with the Banner Saga 3. Banner Saga 3 is a strategy turn-based tactical game. It's actually going to be released on July 24th of 2018. That's tomorrow. For the Nintendo Switch, PlayStation 4, Xbox One, and PC. And that's about it for RPG releases, though. So, if you guys have, again, news that you would like me to have covered in the JRPG Weekly update, please tweet them to me at SuperDerekRPGs with the hashtag SuperDerekNews, and I'll give you guys the credit. I am Super Derek, and this was news to me.